Hello, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec podcast, where we create a team worth leading and help you triple impact per engineer. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, advisor and consultant to Tech Execs, and today we'll be talking about moving targets. I've been talking to so many founders and CEOs recently, and there's one thing one can see all over the place. The market has shifted. Things have changed so rapidly in the last 18 months, it's mind-boggling. Our subject today is moving targets because I feel like things have changed so much, sometimes we don't even recognize the world we were in just a little while ago. One of my favorite quotes, of course, is, "The world has changed. I see it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that was once is lost, for none now live who remember it." And this is, of course, from The Lord of the Rings. And I feel like this is something that is going on right now in our startup ecosystem. So much has changed. And I've just recently talked to, I think, at least a dozen founders who, a year ago, the situation their startup is in would surely put them in a unicorn situation or an amazing 9-digit exit and that sort of stuff. And yet, nowadays, they're focusing on getting by, on getting the business results needed to get their next round of funding, maybe trying to get to profitability. Things have changed so dramatically in so little time. And some people find this completely frustrating. They're exhausted. They feel like this is like going 3 steps back and they have to do things all over again. And I get that. However, if there's one thing we've learned is that if you don't learn to move towards these new targets, if you, in your mind, tell yourself, I only need to get there and that's it, and you never think about the fact that this is just another step along the way, you're going to end up losing all of your motivation. You're going to think this doesn't make sense. And this reminds me a few years ago, during the high times of startups, when I regularly heard engineers tell me, this company has been around for 3 years now. I'm guessing there's no real reason to stay here. I'm going to move on to the next one because by now it should have exited, that sort of stuff. And I regularly heard those. People were expecting things to go massively faster than what we're seeing right now. And as with anything in life, if you're not realizing what you're doing, what are your next steps, what you're driving towards, you're going to end up being completely frustrated, exhausted, and not seeing the point in it. So this is just a bit of advice for you founders, tech executives, looking at the next 12 or so months as you're working towards your next goal. First, understand, accept, you can change it. Things are moving. Things are going to change. God knows what's the next crisis you're going to have. I just talked to a founder here in Israel who told me, look at the past 4 years. We've had COVID, wars, global supply chain issues, financial crisis, what have you. Anything you can think of has happened. And yet, I'm sorry to say, we're going to see even more things. And realizing that and being a bit more stoic about this can only help you. If you're not thinking, okay, this has got to be the last thing, if you realize that things will change, you're going to be less surprised and have less of the wind knocked out of you the next time something happens. Second, when you realize this, you are more likely to create plans that make sense even as things shift. You're more likely to react faster and in a healthier manner when things shift. And even more importantly, you will be able to help harness your team towards the new goals as things shift. If for the past year, all you've been signaling to your people is, we just need to get to X and then we're golden, we're going to get the exit, we're going to get whatever, then surprise, surprise, when things shift, when the target moves and you have to readjust, your people are going to have all the air taken out of them. They're not going to have the energy to do this because they saw a finish line and then it has, like that, gone away. You cannot do that. And I've seen companies where the founders gave off exit M&A vibes for months and sometimes not even knowingly. They just sent those signals. And that meant that when things didn't happen that way, their entire leadership team felt like the world has ended. So don't do that. Realize that things are going to change, accept it even when it sucks, and realize that whenever it happens, you're going to have to redo your strategy, redo and assess whatever you're working on to make sure that wherever the target is, you're still aiming at it, and maybe try and come up with a strategy that's going to help you get there no matter what shift happens. You're not going to come up with a perfect strategy. No one had a strategy that took in mind COVID 4 years ago, and yet you can have strategies that are better than the others. If you want to talk a bit more about that, reach out to me. My email's in the show notes, and I can talk to you about sentient strategy and what that could mean to your startup. And other than that, yeah, things are going to keep moving. I feel as well in my business. That's fine. Take it on the chin and keep moving. We don't have any other option. Might as well have a good time while we're doing it. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. And of course, if you're going to check out the show notes, you're going to also find a link to my newsletter. Do check it out. Comes out every week. Thank you. I'll be here next week.